Are you looking for a fast-paced looter-shooter with so much variety of build combinations and crazy parkour mobility that even after hundreds of hours of playing, you feel like you've still only scratched the surface? Let's talk about Warframe. Warframe is a free-to-play third-person action shooter that's been around for quite some time. Coming at you and I from the distant past of 2013, you wouldn't necessarily have guessed it. The visuals have great detail, environments are immersive with wide variations of tile sets, and UI interface is quite futuristic in looks and feel too. The game is set across a solar system where a war is currently raging. You and I will play as the Tenno, a race of ancient warriors that will play a part in this war through the control of a number of biomechanical armors called Warframes. Players can choose from just under 50 frames that each play in their own unique way, mixing this up with the too many to count weapon options, and there is really something for everyone. Your ship will serve as your personal hub, where getting through the star chart, which is like an atlas of the solar system, will drip feed you new modes, story missions, challenges, and planets to unlock and fight your way through. The simplicity of the core mechanics make Warframe really new player friendly, and has an unrivaled level of smoothness when it comes to just spinning around and hacking away at hundreds of enemies without a care in the world. Despite being so easy to jump in and turn your enemies to ash, the build craft you have access to reaches statistician levels of complexity, enough to be low-key spending hours just figuring out the best way to optimize your new Warframe before you've even started playing it. The survival of the game over the years has been maintained through countless new missions and open world map updates, Warframe balance and redesigns, and a steady stream of new Warframes. Fast forward to today and there's just so much stuff to do, so let's take a look at the good, the bad, and maybe even the ugly.
Warframe is a great example of how to execute a free-to-play game. You don't have to spend any money if you don't want to, and you won't feel underpowered compared to those who do, which is an unfortunate reality in a lot of free-to-play games when they turn pay to win. Not only does Warframe execute the free-to-play game model really well, but it also seems to reinvest a decent amount back into the game. Nex has already mentioned it keeps dropping new content, meaning that the game stays relevant, it brings in new players and keeps the old ones happy with more to do. Over the years it really has developed into a solid game. Mechanically, it's really straightforward. Either alone or in a group, you're deployed into missions to hack, slash, blast and shoot your way through waves of enemies to accomplish your goals. You choose a few guns, your Warframe, a melee weapon, and you're good to go. The gameplay itself feels great. Movement is smooth, gunplay is satisfying, and the mix of melee and ranged combat as well as the crazy mobility and acrobatics make a game that's really satisfying and enjoyable to play. The gameplay loop itself is very straightforward. You have a handful of mission types that you play over and over and become familiar with. But the game's designed in such a way that this never really becomes tedious and boring. In fact, this simplicity means that anyone can start up the game, jump into a mission, and pick it up pretty quickly, which is great for retaining new players. However, when you dig deeper, the game gets a whole lot more complex when you start tinkering with your gear, with your Warframe, and with your mods. And while the game's level design is relatively straightforward, its replayability and what keeps players coming back is the ability to develop, refine, test, and experiment with an insane amount of complex customizations. The range of mods and the impact they have on your experience is really the hero of this game for us. There are so many fun things to play around with that we could talk for hours about just theorycraft. For today, it's enough to say that it's just fantastic. If you want to build a character that zooms around the map hacking things up with a sword, then you're free to do that. If you want to make a tank that's maxed out defensive mods and lays down fire with a machine gun, you can do that too. Any playstyle you can think of is probably doable in Warframe with the right Warframe and customizations. And to us, that's really what makes it so great and keeps the replayability. Warframe also hooks you into the grind, but it does it in a good way that doesn't feel too grindy. The number of mods you can equip in your Warframe or weapons increases as you level the Warframe or weapons up, so you're motivated to jump into missions and level them up. Then the mods themselves can be leveled up to be made more powerful, so you want to do that as well. There are craftable items that need specific components dropped in missions, mods that drop from enemies, and a whole host of other bits and pieces scattered around the game to make you jump into the next mission and gather up what you need. The Warframes themselves all have unique skills and looks. Excalibur, for example, specialises in using bladed weapons in melee range. My favourite Warframe Baruch builds up resource called Restraint, and then punches his way through enemies like a kung fu monk. Other Warframes buff and heal allies, others tear through enemies with mage-like abilities, and others bolster defences and play like a tank. However, with the range of previously mentioned mods, you can pretty much play anything you want. You just have to play around a little bit and find what works for you. As soon as your Warframe's sorted, you'll need to decide what weapons you want to take with you. And again, the range of customization here can be pretty crazy. Primary weapons are anything from shotguns to assault rifles, bows, grenade launchers, or beam rifles. Secondaries are mostly pistols, but they can also contain things like crossbows and throwing knives. And your melee weapons are swords, hammers, staves, and other things to bonk enemies on their head with. And guess what? You can customize these too. But you wouldn't be able to equip or customize anything without your ship. This is your base of operations, and from your ship you can access the star map, the missions, your loadout, crafting table, and a host of other menus and mechanics you'll find along the way. This is your personal space and your home out in the solar system. You even get your own dog. Here in your ship, you're probably going to be accessing the star map most frequently. This outlines all available missions, shows you your progress through the main content, and it's where you'll find special events and other specific game modes like relic runs, which you'll have to do to open collectible relics and get the goodies from them. All in all, mission types are pretty run-of-the-mill. You have elimination games where you spawn in to kill a set number of enemies. You have spy missions to hack consoles and gather sensitive information from the enemy, capture missions that have you kidnap a specific target, and rescue missions that need you to break an NPC from prison and extract them. There are a handful of others and they mostly follow the same formula. Not to say that they're boring, they're just pretty straightforward, and you do a lot of them over and over again. However, the devs have added something to keep things a bit more interesting. Players who have completed all nodes on the star chart will have the option to play with a difficulty modifier called Steel Path. Steel Path essentially significantly increases the durability of enemies, adding that extra challenge for those looking for it in the endgame. One thing that was added in the past that really complemented the overall game is the open world. Where Warframe began as an instanced-based one-and-done mission kind of game, the open world added an element that complemented its traditional gameplay perfectly. Here, players roam the open landscape of planets, completing various missions and gathering up resources needed for their next craftable item. And one of the things that the open world does really well is the multi-staged missions that span across a place much larger than was previously possible. And I think it adds a really nice atmosphere out in the open, where most of the missions beforehand were in the confines of spaceships or caves, and can sometimes feel a little claustrophobic.
For us, one of the main draws to Warframe is the ability to jump in and have a fun session regardless of how much time you have to spare. The sheer number of things to do are a bit overwhelming, not just for new players, but for returning players who could arguably feel even more in limbo than the former. The payment model is one that is well thought out. You really can obtain pretty much everything through in-game efforts, and the microtransactions are used to save the player time, something that you'll need as much of as possible, as the developers have managed to come up with a situation where the immense grind is at the core of the Warframe experience. This grind, however, can be easily overlooked by the variety of ways to play and personalize your experience, whether that be through the complex modding system or just playing Fashion Frame with the countless color palettes and skins available. We recommend that you wait to get the 50 or 75% discount login reward if you consider buying the currency, because the prices without it just seem a bit insane. It kind of feels like they'd factored that in when they decided on selling around 4k plat for 130 quid. The game certainly won't be for everyone. There's so much to learn to even play remotely optimally, and some may find it a more rewarding experience testing things out themselves and feeling the satisfaction of completing a challenge based on their own setup over copying one of the countless builds showcased by the community's favourite YouTubers. Otherwise, you can give them a watch, find out what the heck this is, and more. The content creators for Warframe are a dedicated lot, and if you're looking to learn something specific, I can almost guarantee it's been recently covered in a comprehensive video. Overall, it's a fantastic game, and one that's incredibly fun to play with friends or solo. For us, it's definitely one to pick up in 2022. Let us know what you think of the game in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next one.